So I'm now going to introduce B1 and B2, otherwise known as Nicole 1 and Nicole 2, otherwise known as Nicole Hewlett and Nicole Winters. And then it's going to be up to those fellas to just fill us in, and it's going to be a really important session and a powerful session. Palliative care, it's something we kind of go, oh, it's sad times, but it's also beautiful times. As I said to you earlier in the conference, I lost my brother to cancer in 2016, and it was the saddest time of my life ever. But the beauty of our people and the support we get in those difficult times is just magical. And so the more we can learn about how to share and nurture in these times of sadness, the more we can help each other support the grieving process and also our healing. So Nicole 1, Nicole Hewlett is a Palawa woman living on Turrbal and Yagara country in Minjan, Brisbane. Nick manages the Indigenous Program of Experience in the Palliative Approach, IPEPA, and has spent recent years yarning with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities and organisations and working with non-Indigenous stakeholders to collaboratively break down the systemic barriers to accessing palliative care experienced by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Nicole Winters is a proud Burra woman from the Darug Nation who lives on country and has worked in Mount Druitt for 30 years. Nicole Winters, I was just telling Nicole Hewlett about the clock and how I used to go up there and watch the karaoke nights on a
Yes, so did my dad.
Because I used to live at Mount Druitt.
That's good.
Nicole has a Master's in Indigenous Social Policy and a BA in Adult Education and Community Management, along with studies in aged care, disabilities, case management and counselling. Nicole is the Senior Aboriginal Health Worker Supportive and Palliative Care for Western Sydney Local Health District, loves karaoke and hopes to go on The Voice one day. Ah, made that up. You just let in your face. I shall hand over to you two now. Now I've got you.
That's good.
In your face.
That's awesome. I didn't remember you popping that in.
No, I'd have to be drunk at the clock to do that.
I wish you had now. Hello, thank you so much for having me. Yes, as Paul said, I'm a proud Palawa woman, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm presenting today. I am in Meanjin, Brisbane, on Turrbal and Yarraga lands, and I'd like to pay my deepest respects to elders past, present and emerging, and also express my gratitude for our continuation of cultural and spiritual practices and connections. I would also like to extend this respect to the lands on which all of you are on today, and especially to all the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples we have online today. It's important to acknowledge that we are all on Aboriginal lands, always was, always will be, and that our sovereignty was never ceded. It is truly a privilege to speak to a Zoom comprised of hundreds and thousands of years of cultural knowledge and wisdom. The Aboriginal health worker and practitioner role is one of the most amazing and sacred roles. It's invaluable to both Aboriginal and non-Indigenous communities. And for those that are non-Indigenous that are online today, it's important to realise that, mainstream and non-Indigenous people could never do this role, but we can always do your roles. So it's an understatement to say that it's both a privilege to talk to you more, but also I'm so nervous because I do respect and care. So please bear with me if I stutter or cry, but I've just been given some stress balls, so hopefully I'll be all good. So we'll go to the next slide. I'll just say ding. So if you hear a ding and you think it's a bit weird, it just means the next slide. That was a beautiful story that Charles just shared, as well as what Paul did. And I would also like to share a story before I begin into the slides. So there was once a medical specialist and he was treating a boy that was terminal. And one day the specialist had asked the boy's father if he could record the son's heartbeat for the father. The father agreed, so the medical specialist recorded that heartbeat. Now, this medical specialist happened to also be a musician, and he turned that heartbeat into a song for the father to keep for the father once the boy had passed. Now, the father listened to that song every day, and because that song had captured the spirit of his son, it allowed him to connect with his son after he'd passed and brought healing in the most beautiful ways. Now, I tell you this because this is palliative care. It's treating the spirit. I could give you the GAMI definition of palliative care, but I just don't think that captures it for us as Aboriginal peoples. But I will give you the GAMI definition. Ding, only if to highlight that, oh, ding again. Awesome. Only to highlight that palliative care is our way. You will note that the palliative care definition maps beautifully onto our Aboriginal view of health. Its focus is on quality of life, it's the prevention of suffering, and it's intrinsically holistic. It doesn't just cover pain, it covers the physical, social, psychological, cultural, and spiritual aspects of a person. You know, and in fact, as far as I know, that it's the only Western biomedical health area that actually marries up to our holistic ways of knowing, being, and doing. And it's also important to say that, you know, we as Aboriginal peoples have been doing palliative care and looking after our elders and sick ones since the dawn of time. We just don't call it that. Ding. So, what we talk about today is not going to be new to you. This knowledge is already with each and every one of you. It's in your blood. Invasion may have interrupted some of our culture, but you cannot take away our law, because blood is our law. And this knowledge sits inside all of us. So Winters and I are merely here today to remind you of that, you know, intrinsic knowledge that you already have. So our ancient practices traditionally saw passing into the dream time as a sacred celebration, because you're returning to country and you're becoming an ancestral spirit. And I'm often asked, you know, at a national level, what caring for our sick ones look like, and what's similar across all mobs. And, you know, I can only really talk about it in broad ways about what's similar, because we all know that there is so much diversity even within our families, alone within our communities, and let alone across Australia. But what is similar is that all of us, you know, have gone through a history of oppression and dispossession, which, you know, for many meant denying our identity in order to be classified as human or as a citizen of Australia. And this often meant like a better life, obviously, for our children. Now, given this history of colonisation, it's also important, you know, that I emphasise that if someone identifies as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, it does not mean they are automatically connected to culture, country and kinship. The stolen generation, and for many other mob, meant that many kids were removed from families and communities and were raised to be white with no information given to them about their heritage. Now, I realise most of you know this, but there is a prejudice out there around what's known as the Johnny-come-latelys, and this can often impact on practice and access for our mob. And I just want to emphasise that none of us should be punished for colonisation and how our ancestors may or may not have responded to it. So I always like to premise that before I do any talk with our mob or about any similarities, I guess, across cultures. So what's similar? So traditionally, for a lot of us Aboriginal peoples today, even those that have taken on introduced religions like Christianity, our beliefs around health and well-being are grounded in a sense of belonging. So a belonging to land, sea, other people, one's culture, essentially. Many of us believe that we come from the land, and when we pass, we go back to the land, and that we are all spirits on this life, death, life continuum. Many of us believe that all living things, people, animals, plants, rocks, all have a spirit, and that these spirits connect the living to the past, present, and the future. Many of us believe we're connected to and guided by the ancestors who we access through country, as Paul was highlighting around our special connection and how special country is to us. We also access our ancestors through ceremony and through our own stories. And there is a belief that anything and everything is interrelated and interconnected, like the land, family, stars, that there's a oneness, I suppose, and this is our dreaming. So given this, like, our health and well-being is holistic and it is transcendent. And when it comes to palliative care, many of us need to return spirit back to country in order to continue on that life, death, life continuum. And different communities have different protocols and ceremonies around this, but traditionally and currently, the life, death, life continuum and our relationship with country is something that I have found that's quite similar across most mobs in Australia. Now, said this, and I've got lots of caveats when I give national presentations, but it's also important to note that many of us have relocated and no longer live on traditional country. I certainly don't. In no way does this diminish mine or anyone else's cultural and spiritual connections to country. Culture is different for every one of us. You know, we could all be in the same canoe, but we're still seeing the water from different angles. So I just wanted to highlight that before we go any further. All right, ding. All right, we might need some more clicky business going on. Yeah, cool. Maybe just pop all of those. Yeah, deadly. So if palliative care is our way, why don't we access it? Most of you will know what most of the barriers are, but I'll just highlight them just in case you might share some of these beliefs as well. So many of our mob have a misunderstanding of what palliative care actually is. To be honest, many of us can barely spell it, let alone know what it is. It's not our language, and I haven't come across an exact word for palliative in any of our languages, but we are slowly changing that and taking back our narrative, as Winters shortly will highlight. Many of us believe that palliative care is just cancer, but it's not. It's anyone that has a life-limiting condition, and for us mob, the top 3 life-limiting conditions is heart disease, diabetes, and respiratory disease. And of course, this then contributes to not starting palliative care. Or if we do start, we typically come very late and it becomes end-of-life care, which then circles to reinforce another belief or another misconception that palliative care is just the end-of-life journey, when in fact you could be in palliative care for years, living a full and high-quality life. Now, those that might know what palliative care is, I don't think I need to highlight to you, mob, about the racism in the health system, where we've received culturally unsafe and poorer care or no care at all because the system could not see beyond our skin colour. This is a systemic barrier across the nation because these institutions are non-Indigenous and therefore they're intrinsically built in non-Indigenous ways of knowing, being and doing, which is often at odds with our own. There is no shortage of these terrible experiences and stories that flood our grapevines in every community. And now that we have things like Facebook and other platforms like it, these stories are faster and more furious than ever before. So for many, the word palliative care is stigmatized and we don't access it. And this typically means that when our communities are caring for sick family members, they're carrying that burden alone and without support and without resources. And that's one thing that the New South Wales Aboriginal palliative care workforce, IPEPA, Gwandalon, Caring at Home, we're all trying to change. The other is addressing racism and creating a culturally responsive non-Indigenous workforce to care for our mob. We have a long way to go. We are chipping at it, but and with the likes of people like Nicole, Winters and you mob, we will get there sooner rather than later. What's another barrier? There is a reluctance to talk about death and dying. Firstly, because of the blame and shame. So similar to a lot of cultures, so not just our mob, some of us hold the belief that everything happens for a reason. So if you have cancer, it's because you've done something wrong to invite that sickness. And there's a lot of blame and shame with that. Secondly, the idea of manifestation. So by talking about death and dying, you somehow bring it closer, you make it happen. And finally, for many, it's just incredibly triggering to talk about death and dying. We as Aboriginal peoples come with a heritage of loss, but we also experience loss and unresolved grief more than any other community in Australia. And carrying this amount of unresolved and significant grief can make it next to impossible to even, touch on death without it causing serious distress. And for this reason, we are focusing, strongly on how we can begin that healing journey for a lot of us, so we can discuss these things and not continue these cycles of grief. And I honestly believe that everyone that's on here today, will play a role and can play a role in smashing down these barriers and bringing healing to our community. Ding. So why is it important? I get UMOB are instrumental to ensuring our community have access to palliative care and breaking those cycles that I was talking about of grief that a lot of our communities are in. palliative care is all of our business, and we all have a role to play in ensuring our loved ones are honoured and feel comfortable to pass into the dreaming. If we put as much effort and planning into our birth and our spirits entering the world as we did into our passing and spirits exiting the world, we would make an incredible difference to our grief spirals and to the health and well-being of our mob. If you think, if you all think about what's the number one thing that you want in your passing, often deep down, and because we are community minded, it's to ensure our loved ones, our family, our community are okay when we leave them, so that we can be at peace in our dreaming and not called back. But so many of us don't document what we want or have those difficult discussions with our clients and with our loved ones about things like, how would I like to pass? What are my wishes? Do I want to be resuscitated if shit gets really bad? Do I want my pain managed so I'm not suffering towards the end while my loved ones are watching? All of these things matter, and all of these things, if not sorted by the time your final journey is here, can cause huge rifts in our families and in our communities. Because as you can see by the diagram on the slide there, grief already comes with layers of loss, and with that comes intense emotions. And an unsettled and a bad passing often re-traumatizes families and communities because the grief goes unresolved. It can be never ending, and it's painfully triggered by the most seemingly innocent things. And memories hurt. But when someone is prepared, there's this level of acceptance in the person passing. And with that comes a little bit of control, sovereignty, love, and celebration, not just for the person, but for those surrounding them. Of course, there's still grief, but it changes the entire experience of that grief, because now there's that opportunity for memories to become warm, filled with love and a sense of knowing that that person lived a full life and did everything they needed to and passed away the way that they wanted to. And there is, just such immense healing, in that pathway. Ding. So this is what the palliative care workforce looks like. And if the God sitting behind the clicker can click once more. Cool. You'll see that these highlighted roles are particularly important when it comes to meeting the needs of our mob during palliative care. One of the key barriers is our lack of Aboriginal workforce in the palliative care space. It limits our community's access to palliative care, because not only do these invaluable roles let our community know that palliative care exists and what it is and how it can support families to pass with dignity and sovereignty, but it does everything, absolutely everything to ensure that that spirit of the person and the family receives the most culturally responsive and supportive care. Now for us, and Winters will probably go into this further, but palliative care extends well into sorry business. It doesn't just, end when the person passes. And I find that if you're an Aboriginal health professional that is supporting a community member and their families into the dreaming, you become, part of their weave or their storyline in a really special way. And you tend to be meaningfully connected to them for life. Anyway, so I'll shut my hole and I'll let the guru that is Winters take over so she can yarn up about what all of this looks like in practice. So do you want to take it away, Nick?
Thank you. And I suppose I just want to start. Can we click to... Yeah, thank you. So I all too want to acknowledge that I'm on Darry country, and also I want to just acknowledge if someone's lost, we know in our community that we lose people all the time. So if someone's lost someone and this is triggering for them, this talk, we understand if you need to leave and come back. And look at it another time. If it's recorded, that's good as well. So thanks, Nicole, and thanks to a lot of the palliative care workers in New South Wales that are online as well. I've seen Narelle and everyone writing in the chat as well, because this is about all of us and all of us in our roles, but specifically I'm talking from a Western Sydney perspective. So I know Nick said we don't need the model of what palliative care is, but I suppose when I first started in this role, I walked into that Aboriginal I'll call it Aboriginal palliative care, the palliative care unit, and I seen this explanation on the wall. The purpose, the values and the vision. And as an Aboriginal person, there is no way that I could not walk in that unit and think this is for our mob. This definitely, our mob should be a part of this. And when I started, they said that I had only a few, less than 5 come in the year before. Since I've had this role, we've had over 50, and I've only been here for a year and a bit. So, you know, we can make changes really, really quick for our mob once we do it right. So I suppose what's important there, exactly what Nick said about palliative care is everyone's business. I mean, I've written it down there, and I'm just going to talk to it a little bit because we've only got our time. But palliative care is everyone's role, not just ours. And I suppose anyone working in our people's health and well-being is because we need to really understand that for any of us, palliative care can start anywhere, anytime. Any of us can get sick. It's that stuff around what we're prepared for and what we're not. So, and it's especially important for our mob, as Nick said, about we have that stuff around our history, our intergenerational trauma, our grief and loss that some of us have never dealt with and always will struggle with that. We've got our stuff around mental health, but also that chronic health for our mob. And as we said, that the stuff around heart disease, diabetes and respiratory, and huge things around cancer that take our community all the time. And, you know, there wouldn't be one family, one person online that hasn't lost a loved one within our own life, death, life stuff. So ding, please. Next slide. Yeah. And I suppose I need to thank, when I went up and visited Veronica with up at Nepean, I seen this quote on her wall. And I suppose it just showed me that definitely we need to be doing this stuff for our guys. And exactly that, supportive and palliative care for us as palliative care workers and for us as Aboriginal health workers is doing everything to make each day as good as someone can have, even though we've got an illness that we can't take away, none of us. So I suppose for me, it's that stuff that's in black that we can't turn away anymore. And it's too sad or difficult that it has to matter and we can do better, because we all know our community say any of that stuff that's on there, you know, whether it's everyone's, and like Nick saying, everyone does it different. Everyone, we will have very similar stuff, but none of us do it the same. And even the way we talk about palliative care and death and dying, I don't describe that for people. I listen to the clients. I don't call them patients. That's what the doctors and nurses do. They're my clients. They're my community. I listen to how they describe what they're going through. So there's some of the stuff that we've all heard, whether it's death and dying, sad or bad time, you're not going to get better, whether it's the stuff around finishing up, passing on, whether they're gone, whether it's sorry business into the dreaming. So I really let families and the person that I'm working with, they name it, not me. I'm there for them. And I'm there to learn what they need as family from me. So next slide. So as Nick said, there's a whole lot around the palliative care system, but, you know, good or bad, our community mainly use this. So this is where we need to expand on, get better. And if we don't get our community to use that circle that Nicole put up, then we need to make sure that all our workers in these systems are doing the end of life better for our people. So as we know, I mean, that's real easy to work thing, but, you know, we all use that in our community. Some of us are lucky enough to have closing the gap workers and ITC, health workers in either community and hospitals, liaison officers in all our hospitals. Some of our mob are great using health systems and others aren't, for particular, you know, all the reasons that Nicole said. Some of our mob do use, as you can see in the green there, I've highlighted that some of our clients do use the social worker, an OT, podiatrist, dietitian and a counsellor, if they're lucky and they've been connected rightly when they've been in a health system before. But some of our mob will only use the liaison officers when they're in hospital, or they'll use their health workers. But I think as a mob, we need to get better around. If you've got someone who's been on even your aged care package for 5-10 years and they've got chronic health, and we know that chronic health can turn really, really quick, we should be having those small talks that graduate into the large end of life planning for our mob, because exactly what we said, the death and dying stuff that we do is for us, and it's a very personal journey for each one of us. But really, we leave our families behind, and our families really do need that guidance when we're going and after we're going about what they need to get right at someone's funeral and what they need to get right, and how they live without that person is hugely important. So, you know, really, I've shared a link that Cheryl from Southwest Sydney has done, and there's lots of videos out there to help our mob do this. There's lots of resources that we've added, and they've added Aboriginal palliative care workers in most of our regions now. So, Ding. I suppose this is what I do within Western Sydney, and I love what I do. As I said, I'm a proud Darug woman. I'm lucky enough to have been born, living and working, and will pass on my country. So I love that. And of course, so then when I'm in this job, I went to Darug elders, men and our elders, male and female, and asked them what we would call and what I can call this role, palliative care. So we've done up that drawing. Uncle Wes, Uncle Greg and Jai Pittman did that drawing to the side there. And what it means is Nullawan in Darug language, and it actually means they live, they remain. So for me, it is definitely what we do, and it's how we live. And I suppose this is how I do the role. I believe I do the role like this, in the fact that first I do the meet and greet. So for me, that's a powerful thing. To meet a client when we are discussing this kind of stuff is massive. Then I move into starting their journey into palliative care or supportive and palliative care. It was important that we in Western Sydney, and most of us do in our roles, we actually say it's supportive and palliative care, because we support way before the journey of the ending starts. And we need to remember that, because for me, number 2 is about that truth telling. So it's about us finally saying to the doctors and the family and the client who may have kept some of this stuff from their family, this is the time to do that truth stuff, because we know the end is near. The leaving, I suppose, the leaving and the passing, for me, that's the most honourable thing as an Aboriginal health worker I can be a part of. And I know that is a massive thing in our community. And like Nicole said, I suppose it is part of that connection that we start. And for some families, on slide there at the 4, is that connection sometimes doesn't go away. I live and work in Mount Jort, so most of my families are from Western Sydney, obviously, in health. So, you know, I run in them at the shops and all that kind of stuff. So for me, that's majorly important, and it's forever. For, you know, even for the fact that we're doing COVID shots here, and I rang majority of my family who their loved ones had passed, but still have that connection. And I know that their families have had that talk with me about making sure that they're okay around whatever cancer that they pass with, and make sure that they get checks and check-ins and maybe do counselling, whether it's 6 months after they've gone or a year after they're gone. So we do here in my role stay connected with families. And we've got some plans of actually bringing community back together in regards to remembrance, but also a check-in time and a sharing time where loved ones that are left behind can check on each other and learn from each other and things like that. So we'll be doing that moving forward as well, because I suppose on that slide, and what we need to remember in these roles, and it's a very privileged role that we play, is that the little things are not so little at this time in someone's life. So, you know, it can be a very sad time, but for me, it's not. I'm never sad at work. I'm honoured, and I'm respectful that the fact that I've even got to meet that client that I've helped, but also and enabled the family to get through in however we've done that in our roles. So next slide. And I suppose this is the stuff that just guides me. And I think, you know, I'm not teaching anyone how to suck eggs, because we all do this in our roles as well as Aboriginal health workers. But I suppose that's the important stuff that I try to remember myself and know that we do, but also to remind the non-Aboriginal health workers, the doctors, the nurses, and everyone else that we work for, that this is what we do. And even though we do that, and that's always different for our mob, how they do that, how they accept services and how they work with us as individual workers. Our non-Aboriginal counterparts working with us in health, they can do that as well. So I think it's something that we always, I remind the workers and the doctors every time we are in front of a client about how to talk and what to talk, and, you know, make sure that our families really understand what's happening in their life. And if we are only getting this stuff right at end of life, that's great, but it's shameful, I think, also from health. So I think we need to do better, like Nicole saying, if we can do our birth and our coming and our going should just be as important as health, and we need to make sure that we value both the entering and the exit just as much. So, and that's really on us. So, and it's on us to remind them that, you know, the death for us of a person is going into another journey, and they're still with us and they'll always be with us. So we just need to make sure that we get them to do it better along with us as well. So next slide. That did come up. And I suppose this is something that we probably all work to and we all know, but I sometimes like writing this down. So, you know, this stuff for me is exactly what we do with it. It's whether it's in the unit, whether it's someone's home, whether I do it at a medical appointment that I go with a client for. And for me, it's all this stuff around medically. We can't do it right for our mob if we're not doing it in a positive way to get a great relationship, because we all know we are relationship based. We are all about connection and engagement. There's plenty of times when nurses and doctors have said to me, good luck, and tell me to go in the room. And you know what? It just happens, and it happens differently, and how it happens for every person is unique. Today I'm wearing this jumper because I'll never forget. I had a lady in there, they're like, all the nurses are like, oh my God, good luck in there. And, you know, she's really angry and stuff. And I loved it. The first thing she said when I walked in is, oh, I love that jumper. And, you know, and I think we need to remember that I'm not medical staff, and I'm proud to say that. I'm proud that in this unit and the people that I've worked with, there's been great doctors and great nurses that we've had to mold a little bit, and that's cool. That's what we do in our job. But everyone wants to do a good job for our mob, and I think once we show them and once they see it, they can see we do a good job for our people. And I think, you know, the fact that they are moved now down there when we lose someone, you know, the staff down there, it brings a little smile to my face, because I know, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, I know that we've done that right. If one of our people in the palliative care has rocked their world in the fact that losing that person has hurt them as well. Because once we know that once staff are connected to our mob, they are connected, and that doesn't go away. So I suppose it's that stuff around what Nicole was talking about, the difference between a good passing and good caring. And sometimes they're at odds with each other, with the client, with the family, with the community. But I suppose what my job role is first is to look after the client that's in that bed. Then it moves into the family. And then also I need to be concerned about family, community and all that kind of stuff. But it's also, you know, it's working with that immediate family. And it really my role is, our roles are Aboriginal workers. And like Nick said, we're all different in our Aboriginality, and how we are in our journey is our own business. It's not my role to go in there and tell people how to do it. They tell me how they do it. They tell me how they want to do their grief and loss. They tell me how and how much of their culture they want integrated into that. And it's not my job to judge, and it's not my job to even say things around that. They tell me what to do, because if we don't do it right, that bottom part is, if it's not done well, we still get long-term grief. And when I got this job, I was very aware that if we get it right today, we can help our next generation be okay with health. And for me, that's where it changes. If I've just witnessed someone die of cancer, I don't want their son, daughter, or their grandchildren dying of that as well. So, and the only way we can stop that as Aboriginal health workers is to make sure our mob uses services earlier on, and is be a part of their own life health journey. So they are not passing from, or hopefully they are not passing from, and if they are, they're getting care and treatment way before most of our clients coming to our care, as Nick said, at stage 3 and 4 of their cancer or their journey, and it is just then palliative, and we need to make sure we're doing the good end of supportive and palliative care, because even though you might meet someone, I've had clients on my books already for like a year and a half, and we've walked through that whole journey, and I've had people come in and out of the palliative care unit as truck stops, they say, some of the men, and they're in and out and they get a tune up and they go back home, they get their pain underway, and I won't see them for in and out for a whole year before they pass. So I suppose we need to learn that palliative care isn't just end of life, it's that support to enduring and to the end of one's life as well. So next slide. So I just wanted to, I'm sure we've all heard this stuff around a dairy, but I also wanted to put it in because we've got an Aboriginal palliative care network in New South Wales of all our PAL care workers, and we have moved into this. We used to do a minute silence, and now even as PAL care workers, we know that we have probably just lost a client the night before or the day before when we are having our meetings and doing our business. And also we lose our families and our community as well. So I think sometimes as us as a PAL care network, we know we've got a heavy, we love what we do, but we have a heavy burden around cultural stuff. But just for us to take stock, and we're all on Zoom and we're all online. And hopefully when COVID goes, we'll all be having a cup of tea together one time where we need to just sit and be with each other. So I just wanted to put that in. And if we read that kind of stuff, you know, that's good for all of us to read that every so often, because we all do such a great job in this industry. So next slide. And that is just basically our roles within the Aboriginal supportive and palliative care area. So we've got senior Aboriginal health workers. I listed all the areas that we have got palliative care workers at the moment. Sorry if I missed anyone area. I'm sure I got all of them, but if not, they're there. That was just to show you a capture of what's happening in this end, this palliative care end as well. And they're the stuff around in that middle section that we have our monthly meetings, and we do that. We do that more for our support and our sharing information. We have representation. We have guest speakers coming to us now where they feed us information, but we feed them what we need in our system for our mob as well. And obviously we've had Pepper involved with Nathan, who's been great, and Charles, and the ministry's come on board now and actually let the allowed one of their workers, Alira, which we would love, to be our secretary for the palliative care meetings that we have. So they're specifically Aboriginal workers online, and it's just a great time for us to just get stock of ourselves and think about and come together where we need to. So, and obviously within our roles, we have the privilege and advantage, I suppose, to be able to represent our mob in certain things as well. So there's a lot more list there that we all need to add to, but us as palliative care workers, we sit on a hell of a lot of stuff in around committees and advisory committees and represent our community in all those areas, whether it's Hetty doing videos for our mob around end of life, and we're currently doing a dementia video, and sit on Cancer Council and the Cancer Institute, because for me, I've done a list of all our clients that I've had since I've started and how long and what they have when they've gone in regards to their health diagnosis. So that's things that, you know, then I'm able to bring up in those meetings in regards to we need to do better around this particular cancer and things like that, and how we can do better resources and promotion for our mob as well. So next slide. And this is just some of the stuff that we are using as, and anyone can use this in the hospitals. The Aboriginal Liaison Office will be giving this stuff out as well, but we certainly give this out as end of life palliative care workers, so that stuff around, we have specific resources for our mob that I think, you know, we need to remember, and it helps guide us through these talks. And, you know, I give little packs to families. So when I first meet someone, I give them a pack like this that tells them, you know, their journeys that other Aboriginal people have gone through. Specifically, I tailor these to somebody. If someone's got breast cancer or their mother's got breast cancer, I give them these packs. They're not going to read it straight away, but one day they are going to read it, whether it's when it's in their home, they're going to pick it up. So I suppose that's important. And then obviously with this other stuff, it's a bit heavy. Our second pack, once we get to know the family a lot more, we start talking about the advance directives, end of life will. So this is the other pack, which is a little bit more harder hitting for our families to read, but we need to have that simple talk even with our clients about, you know, what colour do you want at your service, and, you know, and be excited about that, and what song, and how do you want it, and what do you want to tell the girls and your kids, and what's your memories. And, you know, and we know that our people live with our people and we share stories all the time, but, you know, sometimes they're not talks that a mother wants to have with a daughter when they're leaving. So I suppose we as Aboriginal palliative care workers, we're at a very privileged spot where some of our clients tell us stuff they want us to repeat again to their family then and there. They also tell us stuff that they want us to share at the end. I had a lady that asked me to buy a beautiful card for her partner when she was gone. But there's also stories that we hear in our role that they never want us to tell anyone, but they want us to hear it. They want it off their mind. They want it off their heart, and they want to say what they want to say. We all know we've got, you know, our clients don't always get the opportunity to raise their own children and don't see their grandchildren. So we just need to remember there's a lot of stuff that our people carry with them, and sometimes they don't want to take that with them, but they want to say it, and they can't say it to their family members for whatever reason. They don't want to burden them with that. And the fact and the honour is that sometimes they tell us, and that's okay, because it's only then meant for us and it's being shared. And there's other things that we will share with family if we think we need to, and they've asked us specifically to do that. So that's why it's such an honour to do this job. Next slide is just some more stuff that that I've got from all the PAL care workers, and we all use that in our roles and our everyday sharing with our families. So there's lots and lots of stuff online that we can be using to start this conversation. And also we've got Aboriginal palliative care workers that it's our job to walk this line with our mob. So please refer to us whenever you can. So they're our resources. Next slide. And they're all at the end. Now, these resources are so powerful, and so I wanted to put these up because these are specifically resources and programs and opportunities that our own Aboriginal palliative care workers have done within their roles. So Cheryl's done some great stuff at Southwest Sydney in regards to when someone passes away, and also the resource about Sorry Business. Ellen has done some great stuff in her area about, that's a list that you can't really see properly, but that's a list about things that people need to record when they're going away. Simple things like if you're losing someone in the family, about, do you know all the insurances and all the information about the car and everything that they want to share with you, passwords and all that kind of stuff. And that might sound silly, but sometimes we don't share that. So if we don't write it down, and we don't know what someone's insurance number is for the funeral fund, or if we don't know the insurance when it's due for the car, and all those little simple things, you can't get access to that obviously when someone's gone. So these are little things that I think we learn and we share and we get better at doing every single day when we come into work. I learn something almost every day in this role. So and some of us have done great logos, great brochures, and look, Western Sydney, I love that I live and work in my community, but you know, we are able to do that stuff up in the black there about returning to country. We've actually, we do have those talks with community, and if you're lucky enough that your health area supports that, we have done return to country for our mob when they have expressed that. We have got a smoking policy around Western Sydney, around families that do want smoking ceremonies. I have personally brought in elders, obviously when families have asked that, whether it male or female elders that come in and see family and also see the person. Very much this new way of doing business now for our mob is important. It was way important before COVID anyway, but you know, to be able to FaceTime and video call, whether it's our families in bush, whether it's our families that are away and incarcerated, and mothers and kids want to speak to their loved ones, you know, we set all that up in the unit, and we've got an iPad that we do that for. And just recently, because of COVID and the family couldn't get in, which so sucks at this time, it's horrible, but it is what it is, and it's how we are working at this moment in time, where I was able to see someone in the unit and do nothing but FaceTime for that family constantly, whether it was via Facebook, whether it was their phone chat on the phone, but to be able to meet the family where I needed to meet them. It was one of our clients' birthdays, or his birthday. To be able to take the cake, the balloons, the dog, we took his dog in, and he was able to take photos and video, and family were waiting where they needed to wait, and felt like they were close enough in the car waiting, because they couldn't come in because of palliative care. And listen, you know, what we do is massive, and what we do changes lives for those people to remember their grief and loss, because that was on a Friday, and I went and seen the gentleman on the Monday, and just stressed with the doctors that this isn't going good, and they knew it wasn't. But my issue was, it's not going good, and when are we bringing the family in because of COVID? The family come in the next day, and he was gone a day and a half later. So, you know, he made it to his birthday. He made it for that video that I was able to film for that family and FaceTime that family. And he was making it for that day. So I suppose what we do, we need to remember, is just mind-blowing for the family, and it's hard and it's emotional sometimes, but it is what we do, and it does make a difference for that person and that family, and will always make a difference. So I suppose that's why all of us as power care workers, whether we cry on the way home or cry on the way to work, we do it because we know it makes a difference. So next slide. There you go. So I suppose that's just my little learnings for myself, and you know, I certainly try to live by that all the time when I come into work, you know, being that stuff around being open and honest, because I'm here to listen and learn every day from our families. And you know what, you take away something different from each one of my families, and I love that. So, and I suppose we need to remember, in this health system, we do complement, we are additional, but we work alongside. So for us, if we're involved, everyone still does their role. ALOs still do their stuff at the hospital, and you know, you've still got the community workers out there doing their job, and the community nurses still see. But we're an additional. We are the extra stuff. We are sometimes having those hard talks with the doctors and the families, and just making sure that we're getting that end of life right as much as we can. So, and I suppose the more we do it, the easier it is for other families to be a part of, to know of, and, you know, the fact that we're able to share that and learn from that, and then change the system. Because once we do what we do, and we do it easy, we are the best advocates as Aboriginal people to change things for our mob. So next slide. And this is just, you know, sometimes we need to remember this, and not for us, we don't need to remember this, but for our bosses and our health, and, you know, who we're working for, needs to understand that our people, and evidence does show that they will do health a lot better if we have communication that's respectful. And it builds good relationships, and we know this. And we do make the difference for our community, and so I suppose we're just got to be honouring that every time when we come to work around that. We do have clients that are diverse. you know, and their beliefs and choices are important even at this time, and even more at this time, because this affects them, but it also affects their family that are watching. And for me, that intergenerational trauma stuff, it can not stop, because you still got to live with grief and loss, but it cannot hurt us as much as what it does if health does a good passing. If we can do everything we can to make this journey for the families, because that's who's watching in the end. The person's gone, they're going and they're gone, and it's the family that are remaining and watching that. So, it's just as important for us to get it right for the client as well it is for those daughters watching, those grandchildren watching, and that partner that's sitting there who, they've been together for years and they have to do that. So, yeah, that's more than honourable to be able to do that. So that's it for that one. I don't need to say any more about that slide. So it's, we just got to remember it's our journey and we just got to get it right for all of us. Next slide. And I suppose this is something powerful, and I think all of us need to remember this as Aboriginal health workers. With our expertise, we are and we do make better patient outcomes for our people. So I think that's something in each one of us, when we're driving to work and going home from work, need to remember that we in our roles make a huge difference. And we also need to make sure the system works for our people as well. And particularly in our roles, we need to make sure, and we already do that, but we need to continually do that every day when we turn up for work, that until their end and until their journey and during their journey, we need to make sure it's the best it can be while they're sitting in health, because we are taking care of them, and it is our role, personally, professionally, culturally, morally, ethically, it's our role to get and to help families get this right. And, if we do that, we can drive home crying, but we know we've done the best we can possibly do. And that family's crying as well. But it's our responsibility in health to make sure we do it good for our mob, considering everything that's happened. So next slide. And I suppose this is a hard thing, but please remember, I suppose we all need to know that we all go in the end, and we need to make sure that we're doing it good for our people, because, some of our guys don't know about palliative care, and they do need to know about palliative care teams and what we can do, what our Aboriginal workers specifically can do, because, some of our mob do live well, but we need to make our dying even better, because that's what our families remember, and that's what some of our families will never forget, is that end, that last day makes a huge difference for grief and loss and for our communities to come back, because they do. And like I say to my families and my daughters that are losing their mothers and their families, or whoever it is, their sister, you're never going to be good. You're never going to be good, but you'll be okay. And we can make sure that they're okay by how we treat them in health. So that's it from me, and over to Nicole for any questions that we may have.
Nicole, there was one question, and then I'll have to round things up, which is really sad, because I could listen to you fellas all day, which you wouldn't want, but I could. It says, Nicole, I think this is for Nicole 1. Nicole, do you think the resilience of our cultural survival is the reason for connection to country and family is central to palliative care's holistic approach? So I guess it's asking about the importance of culture and country. And I think, Nicole, too, you might have answered that in your slide, but any last comments on culture?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We are country, and country, it is us. It sustains us, and I guess colonisation can't take that away. They've given it a bloody good go, but we're way too strong for that. And we have the backing of millennia with our ancestors and culture, and our ancestors still walk among us. They guide us, even if we don't feel that connection all the time. So yes, if palliative care is treating the spirit, and our spirit is country, family, culture, then 100% it's central, and palliative care is holistic.
So, look, thanks, Nicole 1 and Nicole 2. I really hate to have to cut it off there, but I'm going to make sure that I honour you by reading what people have said, because you were speaking, you might not have seen this, and I can't say it any better than the mob. So these are different people saying what they thought of this presentation. I'm just going to read through them. Deadly, such cultural immersion within palliative care. Thank you, Nicole and Nicole. Awesome work. Thank you, Nicole and Nicole. Thank you. Fantastic presentation. So well said. And love the terms that express the meaning to end of life journeys. Thanks so much to both of you and to the other PAL workers throughout the state. And then the next one, thank you for respecting our mob and our ways. Thanks, Nicole and Nicole, for your amazing presentations. You've both done so much to build the Aboriginal palliative care sector in New South Wales. And I'm always inspired by how much the Aboriginal Palliative Care Network do to provide culturally safe care. Excellent presentations, Nicole and Nicole. Thank you. Makes me wish my family had people like you when I lost my sister. Would have been such a different experience. Now it's got me crying. What a great presentation by the both of you. Very culturally appropriate information in supporting the client and family. Exceptional and awesome presentation. Lovely, Nick. Beautiful presentation. Thank you so much. Thanks to both of you for a fantastic presentation. Yes, it's hard and emotional, but provides our community with richness. It's so important what you are doing. Thank you so much to you both. You are so needed for our people. Thanks for looking after our mob when they most need it. These roles are inspiring. Thank you for a beautiful presentation. Beautiful presentation, well presented, great resources. Thanks, girls. Both have articulated so well. Working in palliative supportive care is a privilege, and working alongside you is an amazing privilege. Gorgeous images. My favourite picture, Nicole, I'm coming to pinch it one day. We got a thief there. Our roots go deep. Thank you both. Really powerful to hear you speaking. Marangbu, thank you too, Deadly. So great to hear others in my role. Wish I expressed connection and privilege like you both. Maram Bangbalang, deadly presentation. Mandangu, thank you. Thank you. Awesome presentation. I hope you really, really feel how special you both are.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Special. I knew you two would be profound, but you still made me cry anyway. So there you go. So thank you so much. Blessings in what you do, and thank you for what you do. I hope to catch up with you both at some point in time down the track, but hopefully not in a palliative care sense. But if
No,
I
don't.
do, I'll tell you what.
You'll be looked after.
Because I'll be looked after, and we all got to go at some point.
Hey.
So have a great break.